What is the oldest currency still in use? Is the question that I will answer by the end of the show. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The More You Know Mondays. The more you know, the more you grow. And this week on the show, I will be talking about Stepin Fetchit. Or maybe I should call it that I'm talking about Lincoln Perry, because that's the actor behind the character of Stepin Fetchit. But I'll get into that in a bit. But before I get into that, you know what I have to do. We have to start the show with some positive vibes, with some positive Monday affirmations. And I do that in the form of a quote. And this week is unlike any other week. And this week's quote is by Jameson Ferguson. And it goes like this. Don't look at Monday morning just as another day that you must go back to work. Be thankful that you have a job to go to, so you can provide for yourself, and just be thankful that you got to wake up. Now, I like this quote, because maybe not so much the first part, because we're in a global pandemic at this moment in time, but then it still does equate to me, because right now in life, unfortunately, because all I do is work. Like, work is basically my social life. I have home life and I have work life. There's no other life outside of it. So for me, it can get into a rut of, or for most people who are still working right now, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, like, you might have the weekend off, but then you're back at work on Monday, and like that sleep on Sunday night just feels like you could do with like a whole extra day for the weekend. Like, if there was 3 days of the weekend, it would just be perfect, because, you know, you could have those 2 days where you could be crazy, and then you could just have this last day where you could just literally chill, which probably wouldn't work out like that. It would just go into like, or become just another day that you could work, you know. But in an ideal world, in my head, that sounds like it would make sense. Also, I think that another thing that we should all be thankful for is the fact that we do wake up every morning. That, you know, it might not be the biggest thing to be happy about, but I think it's a thing that you should be thankful for, waking up every morning. Not that everyone doesn't, but, you know, it might not be a thing that happens every day, or maybe tomorrow you won't wake up. Not that I'm wishing it on anyone, but I'm just saying, the days that you do wake up, you should be thankful for, because those are days that you get to experience something new. But saying that, or in saying that, I know that nowadays, right now, we're kind of in lockdown, so experiencing something new is kind of on a minimum. But then at the same time, you need to be thankful for the little things, because the little things are the only things that you can really appreciate right now, because you can't really get to experience anything outside of yourself and your home life. So be thankful for what you have around you and your support system. And be thankful that they're there for you, and that you get to wake up every morning to experience another day of your life. And I've been thinking about this for a while recently, in the sense that it feels like the world has kind of changed completely overnight. And in a way, it feels like we're being just forced to adjust to it, like, just like a snap of a finger, as if that was always our life. which is why I guess this whole lockdown experience, it feels like an experiment more than an experience, if I want to think about it really in a real sense. It feels like a real experiment that's happening. Like, let's see what it feels like if we just lock them down. That's probably sound hella like conspiracy theory, but I'm gonna go with it for a second. Like, what would it be like if we just locked them down? Like, we said there was this virus, we set out a virus, you know, it's killing people, so like it makes sense. So what, we locked them down, and then, you know, we have to figure out a cure for this thing, so we have to keep them contained for longer. And, you know, before we know it, maybe we'll just see how far we can push people before they actually explode or just completely comply. I don't know. Sounds like a crazy thought, but it's something, an idea that's gone through my head. It could be a sci-fi novel, maybe. But, you know, it would be interesting to look into or write a story about it. But again, gone off in a tangent and moved away from my original point. So if I was to sum up this quote into real plain text as opposed to going off on tangents as I have been before, I feel like it means that we should be thankful for every day as it comes, because we get to live it and enjoy it and be in the moment of it. Like, there's not much that you achieve if you constantly live in the past or you constantly looking for the future, because the past has already happened. So it's not something that can be changed. So the only thing you can do is live in the now to see what you can do now to improve what you did in the past. And the future hasn't even happened yet. So you're worrying about it, as easy as it is for me to say, is kind of like, it's something that you have no control over unless you affect your now. Because what you do in the now affects your future. But that's how I see it anyway. So be thankful for every day that you wake up, and don't see Monday morning as such a chore, as more of another day that you get to wake up and enjoy life as what it is throwing at us at this moment in time. And I think that's a crucial part of the whole puzzle piece, in the fact of, although we're in lockdown right now, I don't think it's not going to be something that will go on forever. There will be a light, because if we look at like Australia right now, they're living life. Everyone's out there partying and whatnot, and they're existing in what we used to experience or know as normal, as opposed to this lockdown lifestyle. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so take every day as it comes and hope for a better future. But the only person that can be in control of your future is you. So do something now that can change your tomorrow. Otherwise, every day that you're not doing it is a day wasted. I just watched this motivational video. I think it just said that in the video that I was watching. But it's true. Every day that you're not doing the thing that you're constantly thinking about and trying to plan for is a day wasted on the day that you're not doing it. So, not to say that you shouldn't plan, because obviously you should plan, but still, just think about it. But anyway, let's get on with the show. Let's start talking about Lincoln Perry, or as he's most famously known as, or known by, with his character, which is Stepin Fetchit. So, Lincoln Theodore Monroe Andrew Perry was born on May the 30th, 1902. and died on November the 19th, 1985. So he lived a very long life. Now, he is better known by his stage name, which is Stepin Fetchit. And the character that he played is very, I guess, from my research, it seems like he's a very controversial black actor of the time, in the sense of the character that he played was basically, Stepin Fetchit had the persona of the laziest man in the world, because he played this, I guess, what can I call it? Like kind of a stereotypical, a stereotype of what we see as the bad qualities of what it is to be a black person. Lazy, uneducated, all these bad connotations was what was built into the character that Lincoln Perry played when he played the character of Stepin Fetchit, rather. But another thing that I think we need to understand also at the time is when he became popular was probably in the 1930s. So this was still in the time of Jim Crow law and everything like that. So although he may have been playing this character, it was, I guess, in a sense, the only roles that were really available in Hollywood for a black actor at the time. Lincoln Perry has been coined as becoming the first black actor to earn $1 million. He is also the first black actor to receive a feature screen credit in a film. But let's start at the beginning. So, little is kind of known about his background completely, other than the fact that he was born in Key West, Florida, to West Indian immigrant parents. He was the second child of Joseph Perry, who was a cigar maker from Jamaica or possibly the Bahamas. And his mother, Dora Monroe, was a seamstress who was also from the Bahamas. And they moved to America, the United States, in the 1890s, where they were married. And then there isn't much else that's really of interest about his childhood, other than the fact of when he was about 14 years old, he left home and joined medicine shows, minstrel shows, and the carnivals, where he would perform in vaudeville shows as a dancer, singer, and comedian. So he then adopted his stage name, which he is known of now, Stepin Fetchit, which he says that he got from the name of a racehorse that he had bet on, and the jockeys. Is it called the jockeys? I think it's called the jockeys. Down at the racetrack. So basically, the name originates from a joint show that Lincoln Perry and his partner had a comedy team up or comedy duo, which was named Step and Fetchit. So it's kind of said that when the act that Perry was a part of with his partner eventually became a solo act, he adopted from that name Stepin Fetchit, and became his professional name, his performer name. And which is the character in which he played which is rather a controversial figure, I guess, in history and also in cinema for black people more than anything, in the sense that it perpetuated an image of what black people might be like to a white world. And I say that in the sense of, if you're thinking about the 1930s and Jim Crow law and segregation, then there wasn't many black figures that were on the mainstream media in TV or film. And thinking about it on the flip, that although he was playing this character which is deemed as this lazy, uneducated version of a black person, which is holds such negative connotations, the reason why it's probably still seen or in screen today, or more than anything, or why it's maybe the image of the stereotype of what people have of black people is, or what I thought, is just because at the time of him being so popular and him being the only one in all of these popular roles, there probably wasn't many. He was probably more in white cinema, so there wasn't probably many black people. Not that there wasn't probably many black people, but that I was just thinking in the sense of not many black people that would have watched it. I mean, there would have been more white people that would have watched this and not known any black people personally, and just made the assumption that, oh, because it's in the cinema and this is now a representation of a black person for us or for them, they would unknowingly create some sort of stereotype as to, oh, because he is being portrayed this way in the film, and I don't know any, and they don't know any person, they don't personally know any black people, then they can make the assumption that all black people are like that, because that's the image that they are being given. That's the stereotype that they're being presented with, which is like, nowadays when you'll see, for me anyway, I'll see a strong black lead in a film or a TV show, and I'm just like, yo, this is dope. Like, I look up to that. But thinking back to the 1930s, the reason why, or even in the 1930s, as his career kind of died towards the end of the 1930s, kind of end of 39, because of how people were seeing the character, or how black people were seeing the character of Stepin Fetchit, and these bad negative connotations that were being perpetuated out there for the white narrative, which I kind of say with like a grain of salt, in the sense of, that was back then. We've come so far now. Like, that, I guess the narrative is changing, but it wasn't as such back then. So in a way, it's as if Stepin Fetchit had to kind of swallow his own pride and play characters that he may not have agreed with, but because of him, it opened up the doors for black people in the cinema, or in TV, or in mainstream media. So I read this interesting part in my research that said that while he was going to auditions, before and after, he would stay in the character of Stepin Fetchit. And there would be times where he would maybe skip or mumble lines that he didn't like, pretending to be stupid or not being able to comprehend the script. And they laughed at it. They thought it was funny that he didn't get it, that they generally believed it, but he was playing this character almost in the sense I kind of connect it to, if you look at it in modern day, that it's very much seen in maybe in the character or in the characters that Sacha Baron Cohen plays. Like when he, as an actor, is Sacha Baron Cohen, but he played Borat in a number of films. Back in the day, he was Ali G. He's done Bruno and all these controversial characters that he's played. And in a way, it kind of allows you to, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but it allows you to step away from the character and kind of look at it from an objective point of view. If that kind of makes any sense, in the sense of he was doing what he could. In a way, it's kind of like looking at like you do whatever you can, or you do whatever it takes to get yourself in the place that you want to be. So sometimes to become the CEO of a company, this is a crazy, maybe comparison, but to be a CEO of the company, maybe you have to first work in the mailroom and deliver people's mail, and then you work your way up and suddenly you're a receptionist or you're a personal assistant, and then after becoming a personal assistant you become a vice president, and after becoming a vice president like you become a partner. And it's like, before you can get to this level of high esteem, sometimes you have to shovel and wade through the rubbish to get to the point of success. And maybe it sounds or seems a bit fickle in any way, but I'm trying to rationalize the mind of this person who lived in such a segregated world, but managed to become the first black actor to make $1 million. Now that's like almost 1930s, so that's like 50, what am I talking about? That's like about 90 years ago. Like, that's almost 100 years ago. And if you think about how crazy it is that the world has changed so much, pretty much in the last, how long have we been in lockdown? The last year. Like, it's changed dramatically. Think about how much the world has changed in the last 100 years. So, in the time when he was living, I feel like although he was playing such a negative, connotated character, which is why it's so controversial, he kind of waded through the rubbish so that black actors of today, black comedians of today, could be seen in a better light. But that's not to say that we don't still face adversity now 100 years on from that. But I guess it's kind of still getting better, slowly, day by day. But anyway, Lincoln Perry arrived in Hollywood in the late 1920s, where he made a big impression. The first movie that he made, using the name Stepin Fetchit, was MGM's in Old Kentucky, which was filmed in 1929. And this was the film in which, while reading the script, he found a few of the lines quite offensive. So that's why he would skip or mumble the lines, like he was kind of pretending that he was stupid or he didn't get what the script was saying, which kind of solidified this kind of stereotype, which was already perpetuated or being perpetuated from the Jim Crow ruling. So I think it's also important to say that kind of, although Stepin Fetchit is such a controversial character because of the character that he played, it's also important to know that it's not like he created this character. Although he did create the character of Stepin Fetchit, this idea was already apparent in popular mediums. So he was kind of, I guess, making a comment and joke on the fact of people thinking this. But, I mean, again, that's my interpretation of everything. Thinking about this in kind of another sense, it brings on or coins kind of something that one of my friends was saying to me recently, in the sense of, he said that you kind of seem to find that people who have gone through a lot of stuff, they have the darkest sense of humor. So I'm not sure if any of that's connected, but maybe somewhat that is a level of the humor. It's morbid because of the character that it perpetuates, but then at the same time, those were the only roles that were available for him to apply for. So whether he was offended by what he was reading or offended by the roles that he had to play, for him to become one of the best screen actors and comedians, even reaching the top billing status with other actors such as Will Rogers and Shirley Temple, he had to play the roles that were available for black actors. And like my mum always says, when you play something or when you do something, you do it to the best of your ability. And your talents will shine through. And no one can negate his talent, but it's just the fact of the character, which is of Stepin Fetchit, which is so controversial. So, like most, I don't know, like most, but like anyone who starts with nothing and now has millions of dollars, him becoming the first millionaire, I'm sure with inflation and everything nowadays, that million would be worth much more. But with him becoming a millionaire, he maintained his expensive lifestyle with him buying and living in a very large house. I assume it would be in a mansion or something. He had 12 cars, one which included a pink Rolls Royce, and he also kept a staff of 16 Chinese servants. I mean, most rich people that I see in TV shows and movies, I've recently been watching a series called Dynasty, and even in their house, in rich people, they have, I don't want to call them servants, but they have what can you call them, people that look after the house for them. They have people to cook for them. This is like the life of a rich person, or the life of someone who lives a lavish life where they have a lot of money. You see it's common where they don't do much for themselves because they don't have to. They can pay someone else to do it for them. But yeah. I guess they are servants because they work for him, but it is what it is. So he appeared in about over 50 films altogether. He starred in about over 50 movies, and he probably in the mid 1930s, with him becoming the first black actor to become a millionaire, he appeared in 44 films between 1927 and 1939, which is kind of the years where his career took a kind of a spitballing spiral down, in the sense of him in, I think it was 1940, Perry temporarily stopped appearing in films because he was frustrated with the fact of he was making multiple attempts for there to be equal pay and billing between white actors and black actors. He was fighting for this, and with it being so unsuccessful in all those years where he was performing and appearing in movies, he decided to just, I guess, leave Hollywood for a couple of years. I say a couple of years because he returned in 1945, probably out of financial needs, because if you think about it, he was making a lot of his money from the films, and it seems like he was the type of person to spend that money as soon as it hit his account. So maybe 4 or 5 years was all that he could handle with there being no constant income. He had enough money to last him for 5 years, but then his accountant was just like, look, if you continue like this, spending that money as soon as it comes in, you're going to need to swallow your pride and start working again. Which is what he did. Though he only appeared in about 8 films between 1945 and 1953. So if you think about it, but he had kind of lost his, I guess, popularity, his momentum. He appeared in 44 films in 10 years, compared to the 10 years where after he took a break, where he only appeared in 8. Sorry, he only appeared in 8 films. That's like a huge drastic change. And in 1947, he declared himself as bankrupt. So the fact of him only being in 8 films, it goes to show that he was still trying to. He was, in his mind, he still had the same amount. Like, he was spending the money as soon as it came in. So he could sustain it before, because the ask for him to be in films was much higher. He was making he was in 44 films in 10 years. He was balling for those years, but then after that he took a break, and it was down. I think it was more down for his morals. He didn't want to work for less pay than his white counterparts, in the fact of he was doing just as good a work or a job in his role as they were in their role, and he believed that he should be paid the same as them. But unfortunately, the Hollywood at the time didn't agree with him. So he was now less popular than before and making less money. After 1953, it was mainly cameos where Stepin Fetchit would appear in films, such as the feature film Amazing Grace in 1974 and One Ton the Dog Who Saved Hollywood. I was about to say Christmas. No, One Ton the Dog That Saved Hollywood, which came out in 1976. Unfortunately, around this point, he found himself in conflict during his career, especially with civil rights leaders who criticized the persona that he was playing in films, that he was portraying of black people, which he is still heavily criticized for nowadays, for especially like in, what was the year? In 1968, CBS aired an hour-long documentary which was called Black History, Lost, Stolen, or Strayed. It was written by Andy Rooney, which he received the Emmy for. And the documentary was narrated by Bill Cosby, who criticized the depiction of black Americans in films. Especially, he singled out Stepin Fetchit for criticisms on the character that he created. Although, I've got my words now, and I looked into it a little bit more. It's kind of like when I said, like, for the vision of like white people in the sense of minstrel shows, if anyone's aware of, that happened, were basically white actors in blackface, performing in this stereotypical image of what they saw a black person to be like. So then the character of Stepin Fetchit is kind of a spin on the minstrel show, but then kind of continuing the stereotype as opposed to trying to change it, which is why I think it would be seen as so controversial. Although then it was also a character that many people loved and a lot of people hated. So I guess it was a type of thing where he made a choice. And it's one of those choices in life where you can't please everyone. But I guess he pleased himself and his pockets. But on a deeper level, it's kind of a thing where, like I said, in Hollywood at the time, those were the roles that were available. So he took it. And although in the character of Stepin Fetchit, he wore oversized clothes and his eyes were always wide open and he had this perpetual grin on his face all the time, and probably he shuffled when he walked. It was all stereotypes. And this idea of, I guess, selling out, is used a lot. You see, or a lot of people feel like they have to further their popularity, they have to make sacrifices on maybe what they believe themselves, but it's for them to get to a point where they can then change and lead in a better way. Not everyone believes that they have to do it this way, but a lot of people, it has been popularized because you do see it in the mainstream media. There's all these conspiracies about how celebrities made it to where they are and what they're doing, and, you know, but I guess, like I said, it's a choice that you have to make. If you believe that this is the way that you have to do it to get to a better point, then by all means, but there are always other ways at the same time. Personally, I'm not sure 100% if I love or 100% hate it, but I can understand what can I call it? The struggles of the time, and also what it might have maybe not understand. I think empathize is probably the better word. But in his legacy, Stepin Fetchit has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And in 1976, despite the popular adversions to the character of Stepin Fetchit, the Hollywood chapter of the NAACP awarded Lincoln Perry a special NAACP Image Award. And 2 years later, he was inducted into the Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame. So that's where I will leave it with Stepin Fetchit, Lincoln Perry. And please do look more into this man's interesting life. Because although it's very controversial, I somewhat believe that his efforts paved the way for what we are now able to appreciate and see in cinema and Hollywood in a better light, in the looks of, if we think of like Black Panther and Chadwick Boseman or Denzel Washington, Eddie Murphy, like all these greats. Dave Chappelle is another person that kind of comes to mind in this same kind of controversial kind of light. Because there's parts of Lincoln Perry in all of them. But yeah, that's my opinion, my outside look. But I promised an answer to the question. And what is the oldest currency still in use? Well, some of you might be surprised to hear this, but the British pound sterling, is the world's oldest currency which is still in use. It's probably about 1,200 years old, and it dates back to the Anglo-Saxon times. The pound has gone through many changes before evolving into the currency that we recognize today, but the facts still remain that although it wasn't the first currency in the world, the first currency in the world was from like nearly 700 years before the Swedish issued the first European banknote in 1661. China released the first general circulated currency. In fact, it was during like the 7th century, and they had these copper coins, which were being primarily China's currency at the time. But that currency is no longer still in use. So it's not the first currency. The British pound sterling is not the first currency. Let's not get mistaken, but it's just the oldest currency that's still now used. So like, think about like, it kind of, if you think about it in that sense, when the UK joined the EU and they fought so hard to keep the pound, it's kind of, you kind of understand it now more, because when we joined the EU all those years ago and we had given up pound sterling, then it would have been like an extinct currency, and we would be using euros now. And kind of thinking about on the flip side even more, how interesting would that be if we had given up pound sterling back in all those time, or 50 years ago when we first joined the EU, and we're now using euros now. And then we left the EU would we have tried to go back to pound sterling, or would we still be using euros? I don't know. We never know because it never happened. But interesting thought anyway. And I want to leave, before I call this the end of the show, because we've been talking about Stepin Fetchit, I want to leave this kind of last thoughts kind of on the whole subject. Whereas, although it's something that we will never know, if he had played his character a different way, tried to change it, we'll never know of if the character of Stepin Fetchit would have still reached the same level of esteem had he had done it a different way. We'll never know. But what we do know is he did it that way. It was controversial, but it opened a lot of doors at the same time. Wrongly or rightly, it brought us through to where we are now. And possibly, I saw this on a video, but maybe this is the sense from all my research that I've found out, like, maybe if Stepin Fetchit had changed with the times and evolved his character more, maybe had different characters. I don't know, like, maybe he could have stayed more relevant so that when he took his leave from Hollywood in 1940 and came back in 1945, maybe he could have made more films, and worked more, if he had figured out a way to change and develop this into more of something that was lessly criticized. But we never know, because we don't. Maybe it happened in an alternate universe. But anyway, like I said, I'll call this the end of the show and leave you with all my thoughts, and for you to like kind of debate over and mull over and look more and deeper into Stepin Fetchit and Lincoln Perry. I think it's someone that more people should know about. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please follow us on social media at My Opinion Means. Probably the best one is Instagram. I don't really use Facebook, but I'm trying. I just it's just not the one anymore. And check us out on YouTube. I'm gonna try and post the videos that I post on Instagram on YouTube as well. See what that does. But yeah, hope you've enjoyed this episode. This has been episode 11 of The More You Know Mondays. Episode 12 will be out next week with more interesting facts about interesting people or events. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and there will be more next week. I'm messing up my words again, so good thing it's the end of the show. And thank you for listening, and goodbye.